Let me talk to you about your innovation journey map. One of the important things about innovation is that it's a collaborative activity, it's a very creative activity, and we know very well that if it's interactive and it's visual, and often if it's actually analog, it adds to the power and outcome possibilities of the process. I'm going to show you a whole series of tools that fit together and link in a particular way that you might find particularly useful. And remember that you can do this both virtually and in person, or a combination of both. At first, we really want to know, what is it that we're trying to achieve? Are we trying to create something new? Are we trying to innovate a current process? Are we trying to discover, are there problems or challenges? And where are the opportunities in what we're currently doing? So some kind of visual overall map is always very useful, and it gets people engaged and involved. Now, one of the fundamentals and a reminder is that we are most likely to be an organization of some kind, offering a good or service or a combination of to a group of end users, or perhaps they might be organizations that are actually part of a whole delivery service. So we want to be thinking about the value offered and the value received and the fit between those two. And of course, the more aligned that they are, the higher the level of fit, as we call it, the more likely we're going to end up achieving success and the outcomes that we're looking forward to achieving. Here is an example of a completed model. We use this in groups. Often we try as much as possible to have both service providers and those who actually are receiving the goods or service in this environment. However, we know very well that those inside the organization often have very, very strong and highly correlated ideas, concepts, perceptions, and also a sense of reality of those who actually are the end recipients of the proposed service. We also like to have some kind of overall structural thinking framework. This one is based on a model called the intentional change theory, and it's a circular model, and we start with an ideal state, we look at our current state, and then we find ways to explore and experiment, create, design, and then do an evaluation. So it's an iterative process. And I strongly encourage you to have some kind of overall thinking, some overall process, and a model in mind when you set out on any kind of innovation journey. It's really important to understand your stakeholder landscape. It's important to understand who we're specifically focusing on, and also the bigger picture of who is around us. Who are influencers, who are decision makers, who are likely to be supporters, where might we find barriers, for example. And I do like this model because it shows both key players, and it shows the shadows, and it shows links in the stakeholder landscape. It's important to therefore actually understand the network in which you're working, both those directly and indirectly who are involved in this delivery network. Now, for many of us, we are either very much a spreadsheet kind of person or a very highly visual kind of person. I do like models that are a little bit of both. So here we have quite specific concepts. We have them on sticky notes or virtual notes that we can move around so we can actually understand relationships, but we're also starting to make things really quite concrete and specific in what we're doing. We also want to actually understand what the various players in our innovation framework, in our innovation journey, what the jobs are that they're trying to achieve. And often we like to put it together like this. So our end user would be on the top line, the direct service providers or manufacturers, etc., become below, and then the bigger picture organization come down here. And I like to use these arrows because it reminds us that there are relationships among and between these. And the more that each of our levels is able to achieve the jobs that they're setting out to do, then it's more likely that we're going to have long-term success. A reminder too that it always involves people actually engaging, interacting, exploring the concepts, and finding ways to constantly pull out where we're at, the stages that we're at, any insights that we've had at this point in our journey. I like creative exercises. This is a really powerful one that is used often at the design school at Stanford. It's an explore your wallet, and then people create, literally build examples of wallets. Each one of these iterations actually tells a story, and it really is very much around the end user, so the wants and needs, and the aspirations, and very much the social and emotive elements of outcomes. And remember, even if it's an organization that's creating goods and services or something very tangible, that we still have customers, users, employees, service providers who literally have both social and emotive needs as well. So we continue with this, and we always want to have the end in mind. I do like these sorts of visuals, the journey that we're actually on, and this creation, and also very much time frames in which we want to achieve outcomes. It's really important to have a closed end as well as this exploratory process. Let's get down now to specific customers, specific people, specific teams and organizations in the system. I strongly like this empathy map, or we call it a customer centricity insight mapping as well, and different ways that we can actually stand in the shoes of our stakeholders and actually see, hear, say and do. We can see what's going on around them. These are really powerful processes. They can be visual, they can be virtual, they can be in person. We can be approximating the thinking of the stakeholders that we're exploring. And of course, once we've actually done the exploration, then we now need to start doing the analysis. What are the insights here? What is it that we've learned from this process? And then we need to start creating outcomes. So a service blueprinting process, for example, when we actually start to map out the delivery process of how we manufacture or how we create or how we deliver, important. And we want to keep in mind who this is for at all times. And back to our value fit model, remembering that we're both an organization offering something to individuals or groups or other businesses or entities that are expecting something. Again, the interaction of people is really important. Different eyes, different views, different functions within a team, very important to do this exploration and have these conversations on this journey. At some point, we want to start also looking for patterns. I love this image. When you look at it, there's both this almost chaotic element to it, and you start digging it down. There are very clear and specific patterns underneath this. And we can use techniques like this where we can actually map things out. We can use color processes, etc., heat mapping, to actually be really clear about what are the most important elements of the process that we're working on. We want to be also really structured and thoughtful once we start getting to the end of our innovation journey, start being really structured, be analytical, and create things in a way that are very highly visible and understood, that we can actually explore and decide whether or not this is efficacious and if we're heading in the direction we want to go. We continue with this process, always iterating and working with our organizational members, our team members, to really be thoughtful about this process. So we're being both creative and also we're being highly structured and end focused. I do like the idea of thinking about an organization's capabilities. What are these virtuous cycles that we have within our organization that help us create success? Always be a good practice to be going back to our organization, what we have, what we can deliver, what we do extremely well. It always is an important part of the innovation process. Some tools like what I sometimes call a customer centricity canvas, business model canvas, strategy canvas, that gives us some overall structure of inputs, outputs, throughputs, and what the value propositions are, or the value proposition is that we offer. And we can also link this to organizational inputs and outputs. I've put together a list to remind us that as well as having the structure of a business model canvas, we have a whole lot of tools and processes that we know from strategy, from innovation, from design, that might actually inform us very well in our a business model canvas, strategy model canvas, innovation canvas, whatever it is that we choose to focus on here. The concept of actually exploring alternatives is really important, and sometimes a business model canvas is actually a great way to do that. Different inputs, different outcomes, different value propositions. It helps us get towards, a strong, effective outcome from our innovation journey. Again, we can explore different ways that we're actually going to deliver on the innovation that we've focused on and have chosen. Always a great idea to go back to the beginning. What is it that we actually set out to do? And what's the structure, essentially the methodology that we've used to get to this point? How can we justify this? How can we ask for resources? How can we be sure? How can we second check and second guess what we've been focusing on? And then we start to get right to the end zone. So now we're starting to be really thoughtful about how this fits into our organization, what the links are, how the processes might work, what success actually looks like, what's our overall system and model when we're getting to where it is that we want to go with this particular process. And we want to make this more and more concrete, and we want to paint these really strong visual images, these sort of metaphors in some ways for those of us in the teams who do need to actually do the creation and the delivery. So what's next? How does this fit with the vision of the organization? How do we create the structure? What are the patterns? How does this sit into the way that we do our business? And that is my thoughts about innovation journey mapping.